Good morning on this 6th day of February, and welcome to some thoughts for today. The scripture of the day is from Psalm 103 and verse 8. The Lord is merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and plenteous in mercy. Exodus 39 to 40 and Matthew 23 verses 23 to 39 are your target if you're reading the Bible in a year. Thoughts for today: happiness is a perfume you cannot pour on others without getting a few drops on yourself. If you have nothing else to do, look about you and see if there isn't something close at hand that you can improve. It may make you wealthy, though it's more likely that it will make you happy. Your road to success should always be under construction. The motivational thought for the day. Two kinds of people. My grandfather once told me that there were two kinds of people: those who do the work and those who take the credit. He suggested that I should try to be in the first kind. There is a lot less competition. On this day, in 1935, the first Monopoly board went on sale. In 1952, today, Elizabeth II became Queen of the United Kingdom. She succeeded her father, George VI, who had died that same day. In 1959, the first microchip was patented and went on sale. In 2012, Queen Elizabeth II marked the 60th anniversary of becoming the British monarch, becoming only the second to do so. And in 2022, on this day, Queen Elizabeth II marked the 70th anniversary of becoming the British monarch, becoming the first to do so. The personal story of today is entitled False Pleasures. John Bunyan was a Puritan. That is, he was a zealous Protestant. He was a preacher and the author of the classic Pilgrim's Progress. A local magistrate threatened to put Bunyan in prison unless he promised that he would not preach. But Bunyan refused to quit. For the next 12 years, 1660 to 1672, Bunyan was regularly in and out of jail. Defiantly, he declared that he would remain in prison until the moss grew on his eyelids, rather than fail to do what God had commanded him to do. To John Bunyan, the pleasures that come with freedom were not worth the price of disobedience. Job's friend Zophar the Naamathite understood this as well. However, he was wrong in assuming that Job had some hidden sin in his life that he would not confess. But Zophar was right in pointing out that the pleasures enjoyed by the wicked and the hypocrites are only momentary. As substantial as they might seem, perhaps continuing for many years, compared with the rewards of the righteous that will live for eternity, such pleasures are short-lived. Even to the surprise of many unbelievers, most Christians have a happier and healthier life than those making worldly choices. Stripped of sin's glamour, it's obvious that the ungodly are choosing poorly. We should always make choices with God's intentions in mind. While the pleasures of those available to those willing to compromise their stand for the Lord are varied and enticing, they can endure at best for only a lifetime. On the other hand, the psalmist reminds us, quote, "At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." That's from Psalm 16 and verse 11. How short-sighted it would be to choose a few years of perceived comfort and ease over the never-ending pleasures that God has stored up for those who are faithful to him. The devotional thoughts for today. The first one is based on Romans chapter 2 and verse 23. Thou makest thy boast of the law. Through breaking the law, dishonorest thou God? Further references in this are from Mark chapter 7, verses 1 to 23. Actor and comedian W.C. Fields was avowed agnostic. So he surprised his friends when they discovered him reading a Bible while on his deathbed. When asked why, Fields replied, "I'm looking for a loophole." Religious leaders of Jesus' day approached God's law with the same goal. They formulated an elaborate system of man-made regulations allegedly designed to protect God's commands, but which instead provided loopholes for those who wanted to get around them. Although those who established these traditions probably introduced them with a good intent of helping God's people to comply with the law's requirements, the traditions became the focus rather than God's law. Jesus commented on this tendency when the Pharisees and the teachers of the Mosaic law criticized his disciples for eating with unclean hands, verse 2 of today's scripture. This was not a complaint about the disciples' personal hygiene, but their failure to comply with the practice of ceremonially washing prior to eating. After shopping in the marketplace, the Pharisees observed a ritual washing to cleanse themselves from any contact, even accidental, that they may have had with Gentiles and non-practicing Jews. Some viewed compliance with such rituals as the same thing as obedience to God's command. Preserving the traditions became more important than obeying the laws that they were meant to reflect. As an example, Jesus cited the practice of declaring property korban, verse 11. This term is a transliteration of a Hebrew word that meant offering or oblation. When something was declared korban, it belonged to the owner, but it was no longer available for their ordinary use. And apparently, some used this as an excuse to shield their assets, even from needy parents, as we can read in the Bible. In other instances, focusing on such rules and traditions caused people to lose sight of the importance of the heart. We know that the heart is always important to God. They felt that the ritual alone was sufficient. Jesus compared the people of his generation with those condemned by the prophet Isaiah in verses 6 and 7, and the reference to Isaiah comes from Isaiah chapter 29 and verse 3. Although meticulous in their religious practices, they did not truly honor God, nor did they love and serve the people with godly intent. A bit like the goats in the parable of the sheep and the goats. The second thought for today is entitled, From Garden to Grave. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, and God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from hence. Genesis begins with a garden and ends with a coffin. What a comment on the results of sin. The progression is from life to death. Sin brought death. Immediately things changed from utopia to disaster. Yet it is a hope-filled coffin that gets our attention here at the end. It contained the bones of Joseph, who made the sons of Israel swear an oath that when God came to their aid, they must carry up his bones from Egypt. Chapter 50 and verse 25. Joseph believed God. Until his dying day, he never wavered in his belief. The strength of his belief was so strong that he made plans to be twice buried, temporarily in Egypt, but ultimately in the promised land. What a strange sight it must have been, the people of Israel journeying through the wilderness, carrying what was probably an elaborate Egyptian mummy case. The coffin carried the hope-filled bones of Joseph. Don't dwell on the world. Instead, read the word. Fill your bones with hope. If we walk by sight, our faith will waver. But if we walk by faith, our sight will see things differently. Determine, like Joseph, to see what you see by your faith. Mortally, you are dead, but spiritually, you are alive. Thus, like Joseph, you are carrying your hope-filled bones through your life in your body of death. That reference is from Romans chapter 7 and verse 24. The facts of the day. In the air, puffins are powerful flyers, beating their wings 300 to 400 times a minute to achieve speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, 64 kilometers an hour. Bugs hold a special place in the hearts of many Japanese who often keep crickets, beetles, and fireflies as pets. Their calls are considered soothing and remind the nature-loving Japanese of a simpler, less hectic age. A couple of jokes for the day. According to a report, the US has a bazooka-like gun that's used for firing chickens at aircraft windshields as a safety test. The chickens are dead, of course. They supposedly sent one of these guns to the UK for the British to use to check their windshields. Not long after this, the British sent the US a memo saying their aircraft shields must be defective. Not only did they all fail a test, but there was also considerable damage to the instruments and even some broken seats. The US reportedly replied that the chickens needed to be thawed out before they were used. Joe asked Bob to help him out with some work on the deck after they finished work. So Bob went straight over to Joe's place. When they got to the door, Joe went straight in and gave his wife a big hug and told her how beautiful she was and how much he had missed her during his time at work. When it was time for supper, he complimented his wife on her cooking, gave her a peck on the cheek, and told her how much he loved her. Once they were working on the deck, Bob told Joe that he was surprised that he fussed so much over his wife. Joe said that he started this about 6 months ago, and it had revived their marriage and things couldn't be better. So Bob thought he'd give it a go. When he got home, he gave his wife a massive hug, a big kiss, and told her that he loved her. She burst into tears. Bob was rather confused by this and said, "What's going on?" And she said, "This is the worst day of my life. First, Billy fell off his bike and twisted his ankle. Then the washing machine broke and flooded the basement. And now you come home drunk." The closing thought for today. Lord, thank you for the wise words of others that help me to be a better saint. Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to your company again tomorrow.